Hello, David Moore with Equity Advantage, and today we're going to talk about my four basic cornerstones of 1031. And I often get a kick out of it. You look online, look at basics, look up different things, and everybody's got their different rules. And somebody said, yeah, the originator of this. And I think that's pretty hard to believe anybody's the originator of anything in this stuff. And one of the lawyers we've worked with for many, many years, he says, rarely is there any new thought. It's just regurgitation of somebody else's. But when I look at an exchange, I like to keep it simple, stupid. The old KISS principle, I think, works well for people. So I always look at it from four basic directions. One, it's got to be an exchange. Two, what's given and received have to be of like kind. Three, you must satisfy what we call the Napkin Test. And finally, we've got to have continuity of vesting. We'll take a couple minutes to go through those four principles. But while I'm on that topic, I talk about retirement accounts a lot too. And when I look at a retirement account, I break it into two primary issues. One, what's a person going to buy and who are they transacting between or for the benefit of? So exchanging, 4, retirement accounts, 2. But when we look at this first principle, it's got to be an exchange. The exchange is between the taxpayer and the exchange company. It's not between the taxpayer and the buyer or seller of the property that's being relinquished or the replacement property. And I think that's one of those things that people often don't understand. So as far as anyone's concerned, typically in a delayed exchange format, we're going to have somebody sell a property, buy a property. We're stepping into the middle of it and turning it into an exchange by the use of our assignment agreement, really, which allows us to take care of everything. But the bottom line is something's given away, something's received. 2, what's given and received have to be of like kind. Now, tax reform took away all the personal property, so now we're just dealing with real property. If we look at the like kind definition, apply it to real property, very, very broad definition. It refers to the nature of the investment rather than the form. So any real property held for investment is going to be like kind with any real property acquired with the intent to hold for investment. Now, keep in mind, how do you prove intent, or what would be a long enough period? And this is a question that comes up all the time. How long does something have to be held to have it considered held for investment? And it does have to do with intent more than time. There's many, many court cases out there that substantiate that. But if somebody's pushing me for a timeline, I'd like to see at least a year. And that's based upon 2 factors. One, it's been proposed several times. 2, the break between short and long-term tax rates on assets held for investment. I think you can defend that. Is a year necessary? Well, talk to your tax people. Ultimately, it's up to you and your tax people. How long is long enough? Often people will talk about a 2-year hold, and they say, well, it says 2 years in the code. Well, it's 2 years if a related party transaction's occurred. But if it's an arm's length transaction, that's not something that's going to apply. Different tax years, a lot of tax practitioners are going to say would be long enough. So you can go from a rental house into apartments into office buildings, into land. Even a place at the beach to retire into at some point would be something that would fit just fine. That third rule, the Napkin Test, basically it says go across or up in value and equity between the relinquished and the replacement property. The Napkin Test was actually started by a gentleman named Marvin Starr, Miller Starr Regalia, out of the Bay Area. And it's called the Napkin Test because he scribbled it out on a napkin during a seminar. But I like that. You're going to hear a lot of people say you have to replace debt in an exchange. Totally untrue. Debt can go away 2 ways. One, by going down in value, triggers tax because you went down in value. The other way debt goes away is by adding cash. And a lot of times, if you remember a few years ago during the crash, what happened to loans? The loan to value decreased and people's equity decreased all at the same time. So a lot of times they had to add cash to the transaction. And we'd have a lot of times people come and say, well, hey, I don't want any debt on the replacement property, so do I have to pay off the relinquished property predisposition? You don't have to do that. Value and equity across or up for total deferral. Keep in mind, 1031 is not all or nothing, so if you want to pull some money out, you can pull it out. You're going to pay tax on that money as boot received. Boot's anything that's received in an exchange that's not of like kind. And the thing you've got to be aware of there is as soon as the boot received exceeds the total amount of gain, you've defeated any benefit of an exchange. So pieces of boot, fine. Don't have that boot exceed the total gain because then you've nullified any benefit of the transaction. Finally, we've got continuity of vesting. Okay, that fourth cornerstone is continuity vesting. Anybody that's been in an exchange will tell you time's the biggest problem, which it is. You've only got 45 days from that relinquished property's closing to ID what's to be acquired, 180 days to get it done. Always a headache. The second biggest problem is that vesting issue, and it's something that you wouldn't think it would be that big a problem, but all we're talking about is the taxpayer that relinquishes has to receive the replacement property. Partnership interests, though, you must understand, are totally prohibited from 1031 treatment. So if we've got a partnership relinquishing a property, that partnership could receive the replacement property, but if a partnership is relinquishing and the partners want to go different directions, then we've got a problem. That's a whole nother conversation we'll have another day. But husbands and wives, let's say, in a community property state versus non-community property state, it makes a big difference. If we're in a non-community property state, a husband and wife might go out, they start with one house, they get another rental house, another one, then they talk to their lawyer. The lawyer says, hey, you ought to put them all into a limited liability company. So then they sell one of those properties that's in an LLC, and we put the exchange agreement. We've got to put it together for that limited liability company. Going forward, a husband and wife going forward out of a property in an LLC into a new property personally in a non-community property state can be a problem. Cost of money is going to be more expensive. So a lot of times the lenders are going to want them to, they won't allow it to be financed in the LLC's name. So the taxpayer ends up frustrated because the cost of money might get to be more. But these are all examples, even though there's four basic simple points. I think you've got to apply them anytime you think about moving a property. But the biggest thing I've got to leave you with today is plan ahead. Don't leave this till the last second. Consult somebody in this field, consult a professional, talk to them about the exchange you think you might want to do well before the deal ever gets to escrow. You wouldn't believe, even though the code's been in existence since the 20s, final guidelines came in 91, we still have a lot of people that call us day after closing, and at that point it's too late. So apply those four basic cornerstones anytime you look at a transaction. Reach out before you ever put a property on the market. Justify what you're doing. Make sure that you rationalize the exchange, because there are many transactions where somebody wants to, they're so adverse to paying a tax, they want to do an exchange, but they put their life on hold to defer that gain. And you've got to really look at the whole big picture. So please don't hesitate to reach out to Equity Advantage with any questions you've got. Even if you're working with another company, we're happy to help you out. And thank you very much for joining us today. David Moore, Equity Advantage, 1031exchange.com. Thank you. Take care.